Hello there, the Unstoppable Dad Project back for another week, another solo podcast. Before I get started, I just wanted to take the opportunity to thank those of you that are having a listen, whether it's your first time here or you are a returning listener. I appreciate you taking the time out of what I'm sure is a busy day to listen to our little podcast. If I could ask you all a favor, as I do each week, like, share, subscribe. Send it around to any of your friends that you think may get some value or may enjoy what we're doing here. If you're on Apple Podcasts, jump on there and leave a review, because by helping us out and doing all those things, you will help us grow this little podcast that we've been plugging away at for the last 10 weeks now. This is something that I am committed to doing long term. I'm also committed to try and get better at it, giving you better content, giving you hopefully better guests, and trying to refine this thing into something that will be a great resource for dads. So just on that note as well, if you have any questions or any topics that you'd like me to cover off, obviously feel free to jump on our Facebook page or our Instagram page, so the Unstoppable Dad Project or at the Unstoppable Dad Project, or send us through an email as well, which you'll be able to find on the posts on those pages, just with any questions that you might have, because I've got my experiences and I've got the things that I'm going through at the moment, and I've got those of the people that I am coaching, whether they're in the program, whether they're within our gym, and that's where I'm getting the content from at the moment. Questions that come through from there, but I want your input. What do you want to hear about? Who would you like us to try and talk to? Any of that stuff. So please send that through, because that's going to help us refine this. That's going to help me make this podcast better and make it a better resource for you. Now, in saying that, we did have a question come through where somebody asked me about how you stay motivated to do the things that you need to do. And motivation's a really interesting topic, because depending on who you talk to, some people may say, well, I'm never actually motivated to do anything. Some people may tell you that they're always motivated to do something. The one thing that I have found that, and what I believe, and this is my belief, right? Like everyone's going to have a different take on this, and you're going to be able to listen to a lot of different people around what you need to, but I can tell you on the times in my life where I am quote unquote more motivated or I am less motivated, for me, it all comes down to my mindset and my understanding of the reason why I'm doing something. So, training's obviously a big part of my life, both from the point of view of me moving physically and me also coaching people. Very rarely do I feel motivated to train. In fact, I'm probably going through a phase right now where, from a training perspective, I'm almost trying to talk myself out of it on a regular basis, and I'm trying to give myself permission not to do something. You've had a hard day at work, you trained hard yesterday, you'll be able to get enough in this week, and as a result, I feel I'm having to fall back onto the habit, and I mean really just doing it and not trying to do it, not giving myself an easy way out, like just going and doing it. Now, the thing is, I also know when I start to do it, I automatically feel better. For me, like that talking out of it process, that demotivation stops as soon as I start moving. And that's the thing that I try and focus on if I'm feeling demotivated to do, say, training. On top of that, let's say I'm feeling demotivated to spend some time on doing something within the business, or even like this podcast. There's times where I will go into doing this podcast and I'm just like, I don't know what I'm going to talk about today. I don't have anything that really comes to the top of mind that I want to address. I'm going to sound like an idiot when I do it. All these things, all these negative thoughts come to my head, and I start to give myself some excuses as to why I shouldn't. And those of you that have listened to a few know that I like to rant and go off on tangents a little bit, or those of you that have spent any time with me will know that. But I find that once I get started, I'm okay. this whole podcast thing, like the motivation around doing it, it was not meant to be a highly edited type deal. It was meant to be something where both the conversations I'm having, whether it be the conversations with myself, and I have a lot of conversations with myself, some good, some bad, with the microphone in front of me or without the microphone in front of me, or it's a conversation I'm having with somebody else, are meant to be raw. It's meant to be unedited to give you guys an insight into, I guess, my fatherhood experience and others' fatherhood experience, because it's not something that's not something that you can plan day to day for. Now, you can have a schedule and a structure around it, but it's so dynamic and it's ever changing that I think being able to have a real insight into what's going through somebody's head when they start talking about these things is important. Anyway, back to the topic. So motivation to do particular actions is hard. Like it's especially if you are in a very negative frame of mind. Like you have a lot of other external stresses going on in your life, financial stress, stress from the spouse, like all these other external stresses are going to demotivate you to do particular thing, to take particular action around things that you may deem as important. And there are a couple of things that what I want to do with this, and when I talk about this, is I want to try and step away from just going, hey, you just need to knuckle up and do the thing you're meant to do. I think there's an element of that with a lot of stuff. Like, at the end of the day, you just need to fucking do it. Like what Yoda said, do or do not, there is no try. Okay? Like, you either do it or you don't. And that's one thing I've learned from my own experience and others' experiences that I've been coaching. You're either in or you're out. There's really no halfway in or halfway out when it comes to a lot of things that we need to do. There's no halfway in or halfway out as a father. You either are or you aren't. You're either engaged with your children or you're not. You're either setting the right example for your children or what you feel is the right example, or you're not. And I think that what happens when we start to get demotivated is we take our own power away around the actions that we need to do. And what I mean by that is we start to think that it's somebody else's fault or somebody else is responsible for it, or I can't do this because of reason, or the reason I've set in my mind X, Y, Z. And that is what I've found happens with motivation for people. When you get to a point where you're demotivated, and I do it too, like I was just mentioning before, right now, when it comes to my training and also some of the things that are happening within business, not so much, but training at the moment, because we are a little bit busier from a business point of view, I'm a little bit demotivated with my training. And I find that I start to tell myself that there's other reasons why I can't do things. And those reasons are taking my power away from my ability to do that action. Okay, and there are going to be reasons that come up from time to time. Like, you know, I'm not sure if I mentioned it in this podcast, but some of you that know me will have known, like, we've been through a rough patch with our kids being sick. Both of them are completely fine, but, you know, we've had a couple of trips to hospital and, you know, they've been away from school or away from daycare, and this is just part of having kids, and that's just what happened. And that, you know, say for example, we had an overnight, or not an overnight stay, but we're in hospital till like midnight one night with both the kids. And then by the time we got home, I was due to get up early to go to jiu-jitsu the next morning. I made the decision not to go because I wanted to prioritize sleep over that. But that for me was a reason why I didn't do it. But listen to what I said within that sentence pretty clearly, because I said I made the decision to not go because I wanted to prioritize sleep. So for me, not doing that action was my choice. It was my decision. The reason I didn't do it was, I feel like, for a legitimate reason, because I wanted to get more sleep rather than just go and do it. And knowing myself, well, if I go and step onto the mats and I've only had 3 hours sleep, I'm probably not going to enjoy the session. But there's been other times where nothing's happened. I'm just feeling a little bit over it. I'm feeling demotivated. And rather than just searching for motivation, I'm just going and doing it. And that's the same with training in the gym. I'm just going through a little bit of a funk with it when it comes to that now. I haven't stopped doing it. I've continued to do it. I've maybe dropped back the frequency at which I'm doing it, but I'm still keeping up the habit of doing it. And I think there's this constant search where people constantly look for motivation, and the problem is it's fleeting. It's an emotion. It's going to come and go, and sometimes you just need to go and you just need to do stuff. So what do you need to do in order to make yourself move closer to doing the things that you have to do? And I've spoken to a few clients about this, and what I've put my finger on is on the times where I'm not feeling motivated to go and do something, I set myself up little triggers which are going to spark me to just take the action to do it. And it could be something like, use the jiu-jitsu example. If I wake up in the morning and I'm meant to go train at 6:30 a.m. and I've got a big day at work, I know I'm not going to be able to get in at any other time. I will have the night before I go to bed, I will have my gi out, I will have it set up, I will have it ready to go. And then from there, when I wake up, I try and just rely on autopilot to go get in the shower, put my gi on, and then from there, that is the trigger that I need in order to go. So we say, for example, it's almost like getting your body to do something before it has a chance to talk you out of it. And it's like, say, for example, if you train early, having your shoes, having your workout gear ready to go. And literally you get out of bed, you may have a shower, you may not, you may just get straight into your gear, and then you're already dressed, you're already changed. And then the next step, the next trigger is like, just get in the car and drive. Because I don't think I've ever gotten to the point where I'm getting into the car and driving and I've turned around from that point. I've followed through with it. And they're the two triggers I need in order to get there. And I think when you're going through a funk, or you're going through this period where you're not feeling motivated to take action on anything, setting yourself up with these triggers is an important thing. Same as with the podcast. If I'm not really feeling motivated to do it, literally just turning the microphone on, hitting record, and then starting is generally enough for me to get something going. Now, I might do 1 or 2 takes of it, but once I've started and once I've done the first little bit, I'm okay to continue to go. I think that's step one. And I think when it comes to like exercise and things like that, setting yourself up with those triggers is important. And if you're the type of person that you find it hard to stay motivated on these things or stay disciplined, then I think having somebody to hold you accountable on those things is important as well too. So having a coach, making sure you're going somewhere where people are going to miss you if you're not there. Like from this, I'm talking training wise now. I think that's important. But then within yourself, in order to get there, within your actions, having those triggers so that you just follow through with the action of going and doing what you said you're going to do. I think the other side of it too, and the other part of motivation, is not having a plan and not planning out far enough in advance, trying to live day to day, trying to only get so much in. I'm not looking too far into the future, because having the plan can be like that trigger, right? Whereas if we don't have to think about what we're doing and it's written down in front of us, like say for example, from a business point of view, there's always something that can be done. And I'm sure from a job point, like those of you that have jobs, I'm sure there's always all this stuff that needs to be done. One thing that I've done that really changed what I do, and there are a lot of different books and there are a lot of different people that kind of recommend this stuff. I just started writing down 3 critical tasks each day, and my goal is just to get them done. And I tried 5 with the other things that I had to do, because say for example in my job, in my business, I have to coach. So some days I'll coach for 4, 5, 6 hours a day. And I was finding on those days, if I wrote down 5 tasks, I just wasn't getting them done, and I wasn't able to kind of build up those daily wins. And I'm the type of person that I will get motivated to do more, but you also have to know your limitations and you have to know where you're at. It's the same as training. Like, you can only push so far before you're going to put yourself in a position to get injured or get hurt. So 3 was like the magic number for me, doing 3 critical tasks a day. I write those 3 things down, I cross them off the list, and that means when I'm not feeling motivated, quote unquote motivated to do, like, I've got a plan. And I think that's a lot of the stuff around motivation. Like, motivation is going to come and go. I realistically, over the last 18 months, I've only ever really felt motivated to train when I am training for something. And I mean like a competition or something like that. And I don't think... I think that it's good to have those short-term things. And if you're starting something brand new, like trying to get back into something, having a short-term goal is good rather than trying to think too far down the track. But I think eventually, as older men, as dads, you have to shift that mindset from I'm doing this for the short-term goal to I'm doing this for the long-term. Like, you have to have a longer-term goal in mind, because constantly pushing hard in the short term has a short life cycle. Like, you're going to burn out too much if you're doing that. That doesn't mean you don't work hard. It just means that at some point, I truly believe that you have to shift your focus and your mindset from short-term to long-term. Starting off, short-term's good, and going through phases where you do those short-term pushes is great. But as long as when you're doing that, it's not like I'm pushing for 6 weeks and then I'm stopping for 6 weeks. I'm pushing for 8 weeks and then I'm off for 10 weeks. Because that'll give you great results on whatever it is you're doing. This doesn't even need to be training. This can be business and the rest of it. Like, if we take my 3 critical tasks, for example, if I only do them for 6 weeks, but then I don't do anything more for another 6 weeks, I'm not going to get any traction with the stuff I need to do. It's the same with training. You'll get great results for the 6 weeks that you're there, but then what do you do the 6 weeks after? And that plays on your head, and that plays on your mentality. And especially when, as a dad, you want to set the example of trying to be happy and happy with yourself and happy with what you're doing. And some of you may be the type of people that can just, full throttle, full time, all the time, pushing hard, accelerator down. But I think from my experience and the people that I've worked with and the people I know, like, there's a short life expectancy to that. And I think once you become a dad, one of the big shifts that need to be made to really stay motivated and stay disciplined with the actions that you need to take is like, hey, I'm not just focusing on the next 6 weeks. Yes, I might be doing a 6-week push, but I'm doing it knowing what's going to happen after that. Like, I'm shifting to a more long-term approach. I'm invested in this long-term, 5 years, 10 years, 15 years. Like, and that doesn't mean the ins and outs of what you do isn't going to change, but it's like the reason I'm doing this is for long-term. It's to, when my kids get older, I'm able to run around with them. It's so I can be active as a grandfather and I can run around after my grandkids. Like, it's a long-term deal. And I think if you haven't made that shift when you have kids, it's a very important thing, because otherwise you get caught in this loop of just trying to get all these short-term results, and it can be fucking exhausting. Doesn't mean you don't do the work, but I think a lot of motivation revolves around short-term pushes without the long-term in mind. So motivation's a tricky one. It's one that, like, I could go down a rabbit hole for hours on things I've seen work, things that have worked for me, things that have worked from other people for the point of view of motivation. And you can keep yourself motivated by having something to train for. But if it's a hard push and you're going to burn out, if you need to keep recycling that short term, maybe it's the way you're positioning what you're doing in your mind, not having a long-term approach to it, not thinking about later on down the track and why you're doing it. And that doesn't matter whether it's training, that doesn't matter whether it's business, that doesn't matter whether it's your relationships. It's all, I think that once we get past a stage in our life where we can no longer be selfish, and once kids come along or you get married, you can't be 100% selfish because you've got other people that are very dear to you that you have to worry about. That's when things have to take a shift from short-term push to long-term. And by doing that, from a mindset point of view, It maybe won't keep you motivated, but it should be enough to keep you disciplined and keep you to your word of, I'm going to do this because I'm doing this to make myself better for the long term, or make my business better for the long term, or whatever the case might be. And that's really been one of the biggest changes for me, because even though I'm going through a funk and I'm maybe not feeling motivated, I continue to do the things I need to do rather than just settling for it's too hard at the moment, because it does get hard. It's always going to be hard. It's going to be a different level of hard, and it's okay sometimes to take some time off, and it's okay to kind of sit back and reflect. But I think when you are constantly looking for motivation, you take your power away from the actions that you need to take. And that's the underlying thing. Motivation's not always going to be there. And it's on you whether you do or don't do the task. And it's your power. It's giving yourself the power to either do it or don't do it is a pretty liberating thing. And that's in the absence of motivation. That's choice. That is when you do it, and follow through with what you're doing, that's discipline. But the biggest thing, if you're constantly searching for motivation, I think you take away your own power. And I think that's where you get caught in this cycle where those negative thoughts and emotions can start to creep in. But if you're constantly looking for motivation, probably stop. It's not going to be good for you long term. Have a think about why you want to do things, why you want to implement things, why you want to start things, and why you want to continue to do things. Motivation will come and go. Discipline will stay. Set yourself up with some triggers to help you take the action that you need to, and understand that a lot of this is you have the power to make the decision to do it or not. All right. At 20 minutes, which is what we like to stick these solo podcasts to, hopefully that has helped on the question of motivation. As I said, tricky one, interesting topic, interesting subject. Let me know your thoughts. Let me know if you believe motivation is something you can just spark out of nowhere. Go listening to some YouTube clips or, some different things like that. But that's it for this week. Motivation. Hopefully you guys stay motivated. If you don't stay motivated, stay disciplined. Keep doing what you need to do. Continue to be unstoppable. Thank you. Bye.